Respect is earned, not demanded. That line hits different when the people demanding respect are the same ones willing to punish their own daughter in public. In today's story, a bride refuses to move her wedding date just to accommodate her sister's Bali retreat, and her parents respond by boycotting the ceremony, leaving empty seats in the front row and calling it a lesson in humility. But this was never about a date. It was about control. Before we dive into today's story, let us know where you're tuning in from. It's always amazing to see where our stories travel. Don't forget to subscribe so you won't miss the next twist in this journey. And now, let's hear her out. I used to believe that if I stayed steady, if I stayed reasonable, if I never made a scene, then I would be loved without conditions. That was my quiet superstition growing up in North Scottsdale. Be the reliable one. Be the one who doesn't need extra. Be the daughter who doesn't embarrass the family. I wasn't dramatic. I didn't slam doors. I didn't demand. I built my life carefully, politely, as if gratitude were the rent I paid to exist in it. For a long time, I thought it was working. My name is Sable Hartwell. I'm 31, and I run mentoring programs for at-risk teens in Phoenix. I build schedules, coordinate volunteers, stretch tight nonprofit budgets into something that still feels human. I'm good at holding things together. I've always been good at that. But the day everything changed didn't start with a fight. It started with a sunset. Ethan proposed to me at the Desert Botanical Garden in late December, just before Christmas. The sky over Papago Park was that particular Arizona pink, soft, almost unreal cactus silhouettes etched against it like careful brushstrokes. He didn't rent out the place. There was no violinist hiding behind a saguaro. Just us, the desert air cooling fast, and a ring that had belonged to his grandmother for over 60 years. When he dropped to one knee, he didn't give a speech about forever. He just said, "I want to build something that's ours. Not inherited, not controlled. Ours." That was when I started crying. It wasn't about the diamond. It wasn't even about the proposal. It was the word ours. I'd grown up in a house where everything came with invisible strings. Silverleaf, North Scottsdale's crown jewel, where my parents' home sat behind guarded gates and perfectly trimmed hedges, marble floors, glass walls. Art selected more for value than feeling. It was beautiful. It was cold. Standing there in the desert with Ethan, I felt chosen for the first time without comparison, without a sibling in the background glowing brighter, without someone reminding me I was steady. I said yes. The next morning I called my parents. My mother answered on the second ring. Mary Ann Hartwell had a soft voice, always had, the kind that made everything sound reasonable even when it wasn't. She gasped when I told her, cried, said she was proud of me, said Ethan was such a solid man. Then my father came on the line. Graham Hartwell rarely got emotional. He built his reputation on composure and leverage. He owned a chain of high-end auto dealerships across the valley, luxury import service centers, fleet contracts. He valued control. He valued appearances. He valued winning. Sable, he said, and for once he didn't sound distracted. "I'm happy for you. It's about time." It was the warmest I'd heard him in years. I hung up feeling seen. A week later, Ethan and I drove up to Silverleaf for lunch. The gates opened after security confirmed our plates. The house looked the same as always, angular, immaculate, perched against the desert like it had conquered it. Inside, everything was spotless. Too spotless. You could feel the rules in the air. Coasters under glasses. No shoes beyond the entry. Conversations curated. My mother poured wine at noon. My father checked his phone between bites. Then she set her glass down and smiled at me like she had a secret. "Sweetheart," she said, "your grandparents left something for this." I frowned. "For what?" "For your wedding." My chest tightened. When my grandparents passed in 2019, they'd left behind a trust. I knew that much. But no one had ever explained details to me. My father cleared his throat. $120,000, he said, set aside for the first grandchild to marry, to be used for the wedding, a home, or establishing the marriage. "You're first." The number echoed in my ears. 120,000. It wasn't the money that made my throat burn. It was the idea that my grandparents, who had taken me camping in Sedona and slipped me $5 bills for ice cream even when I was 20, had thought ahead. that they'd wanted to stand behind me even after they were gone. "That's me?" I asked stupidly. My mother left. I believed him. I drove back down to Tempe that afternoon floating. For once, I wasn't the afterthought. I wasn't the "she'll be fine" daughter. I was the priority, the beneficiary. I didn't realize yet that money in my family was never just money. It was a tool, a lever, a way to test obedience. Growing up, the contrast between me and my younger sister was subtle but constant. Delphine Della to the world was 3 years younger and born with what my father called spark, ballet lessons. By the time she was 25, she had a lifestyle brand on Instagram and over 100,000 followers chasing her through Bali sunsets and wellness retreats. She has something special, my father used to say watching her posts at the dinner table. And me, Sable's steady. "She'll be fine." It sounded like a compliment. It wasn't. It was permission not to invest. I paid my own way through most of college, took internships that didn't pay much because I believed in the work. I didn't ask for extra. I thought not needing help made me easier to love. So sitting there in Silverleaf hearing about the $120,000 trust felt like a correction, like finally something was being given without comparison. Before we left, I texted my mom a photo Ethan had taken of us in the garden the night he proposed. She responded within minutes. "October is perfect for a wedding here. The weather will be beautiful. We'll make it stunning." I saved that text. I didn't know why. It wasn't dramatic. It wasn't threatening. It was just instinct. A quiet voice in me that had learned to archive promises. As Ethan and I drove back down the 101, I stared at the desert, stretching wide and sun-bleached beyond the windshield. I felt hopeful. I felt chosen. I felt like I was finally stepping into something that belonged to me. What I didn't know then was that the $120,000 wasn't a gift. It was a leash, and someone sooner or later was going to pull it tight. By April, wedding planning stopped being dreamy and started being math. Ethan and I toured venues all over Scottsdale and Carefree, golf resorts that felt corporate, barn-style spaces that felt forced, country clubs with minimums that made my stomach clench. Everywhere we went, I tried to imagine myself walking down the aisle. Most places were fine, pretty, acceptable. Then we drove up to the Boulders Resort and Spa in Carefree. The red rock formations rose up behind the property like they'd been placed there intentionally for drama. The air felt different, quieter, intentional. When the event coordinator walked us through the outdoor ceremony site, the light filtered through desert trees just right. I could hear it. The music, the hum of guests, the sound of Ethan's breath catching when he saw me. "This is it," I said before I'd even looked at the pricing sheet. October 18th, 2025, 18 months out, peak season. The coordinator warned us dates went fast. The deposit was $8,500, non-refundable. Ethan and I looked at each other in the parking lot afterward. That number wasn't small, but neither was what this meant. We signed. Over the next few weeks, the numbers stacked up. Venue rental, catering minimum, photographer, florist, DJ lighting, a projection screen for a photo slideshow, my dress and alterations, invitations, rentals. We built a spreadsheet in our Tempe apartment kitchen table, laptops open, takeout containers pushed aside. Total projected budget $52,000. We decided exactly where it would come from. My savings from 5 years of careful budgeting. Ethan's savings plus a modest inheritance from his grandmother when she passed the year before. We didn't factor the trust fund into our base calculations. That money we told ourselves would go toward a down payment, toward stability, toward our start. I sent out save the dates in May. 200 guests, family from both sides, college friends, mentors, co-workers. The responses flooded in. We wouldn't miss it. Booked our flights already. So excited for October. That was when it shifted from an idea to a commitment, a social contract. You don't move something like that casually. Meanwhile, Della's life unfolded on a different grid entirely. Brand partnerships, wellness retreats, soul resets, photos in Tulum, Big Sur, Bali. She didn't have a fixed salary. She had momentum. And my parents funded the gaps. I didn't resent her. Not exactly. I just understood the hierarchy. Della was an investment. I was self-sustaining. When I texted my mom photos of the boulders, she replied instantly, "It's breathtaking. October 18th is perfect. Your father will make sure your grandparents' contribution is handled properly." Handled properly. My dad echoed it later in a short call. "We'll take care of the trust portion," he said. That was meant for this. Again, I saved the messages, not because I expected betrayal, just because something in me had learned that clarity mattered. A few weeks later, during a casual phone call, my mom said something that barely registered at the time. "Well," she said lightly, "a date is just a date, honey. What matters is family being able to attend." I laughed. "Sure, but October's ideal." "Of course," she said quickly. Just saying. The comment left a faint scratch in my mind, like a hairline crack in glass, invisible unless the light hit it right. At the time, I told myself I was overthinking. The contracts were signed, the deposits paid, 200 people were planning flights and hotel rooms, vendors were booked. My dress fittings were scheduled in Old Town Scottsdale. Everything was moving forward. I thought my parents were simply proud. I didn't realize they were looking at October 18th the way they looked at their calendar in Silverleaf Open Adjustable, something to move if it interfered with a different priority. I thought they were speaking politely. I didn't know they genuinely believed they could reschedule my life the way they rescheduled a dinner reservation. And I certainly didn't know yet that the word humility was already being prepared for me. 3 months before the wedding, I saw it on Instagram. Della was bouncing on a white hotel bed, sunlight pouring through sheer curtains behind her. The caption read, "Opportunity of a lifetime. Bali retreat. Major brand networking. Grateful beyond words." She tagged a luxury wellness collective I'd seen before, private chefs, curated excursions, influencers, and coordinated linen sets. The dates were written casually in the next story slide. October 12th to 26th. I stared at the numbers for a second, but it didn't click. Della was always traveling. Tulum, Sedona, Italy. I didn't connect it to anything. At that point, we were about 90 days out from October 18th. Everything was moving fast. Final catering tasting scheduled, my dress in alterations in Old Town Scottsdale, the DJ playlist half built, guest RSVPs rolling in daily. I didn't think Bali mattered. Then, on a Tuesday afternoon, my phone buzzed while I was leaving the office. "Call me about the wedding date." It was from my mom. I stepped out into the Phoenix heat, the asphalt shimmering, the sun too bright. I pressed my phone to my ear. "Hi, Mom." Her voice was tight. Not angry, controlled. "It's about October 18th. My stomach tightened. "What about it?" "Well," she said carefully. "Della just finalized her Bali retreat. It's an incredible opportunity for her. Major brands, exposure. It's October 12th through the 26th. Silence stretched between us. "Mom," I said slowly, "that's my wedding." "I know," she replied. "That's why I'm calling." I leaned against my car. "Okay. Could you move it?" she asked, as if she were asking me to shift a brunch reservation. "Maybe to November, or even spring next year." May 2026 would be beautiful. I blinked. "We signed the venue contract 18 months ago," I said evenly. "The deposit is non-refundable. Save the dates went out in May. Vendors are locked in. Guests have flights. My dress is mid-alteration. We can't just move it." She sighed softly like I was being difficult. "Della's retreat was $18,000 sable. It's non-refundable. If she cancels, that money is gone." The number hung there, 18,000. I felt something cold settle in my chest. "We've already committed over 50,000, I said. "Ethan and I saved for 5 years. Every contract has penalties. If we move the date, we're burning money too." "That's not the point," she said. "This is about family. Della's career is taking off. This retreat could change everything for her. Your wedding can happen anytime. My wedding can happen anytime." I closed my eyes. "No," I said calmly. "The date stays." There was a pause, a long one. "I'll talk to your father," she said, and then she hung up. That night, my dad called. He didn't open with congratulations or questions. He opened like he was closing a deal. "Sable," he said, "I hear you're refusing to adjust your date. I'm keeping the date we signed for, I corrected. You're being selfish. The word hit harder from him. We have contracts, I said. We have 200 guests. Money isn't the issue, he snapped. Respect is. This is your sister. You're choosing a calendar over family. I kept my voice level. I'm choosing the commitments I made. He exhaled sharply. You need to learn humility. There it was. Dad? No, he cut in. You've had things handed to you your whole life. My jaw tightened. I paid for most of this wedding myself. That's not the point. It feels like the point. Silence. If you can't compromise, he said finally, then we have a problem. He hung up. I stood in our kitchen staring at the wall. Ethan stepped closer, searching my face. What did he say? He said I need to learn humility. Ethan's jaw flexed. Humility for what? Signing a contract. I didn't cry. I didn't yell. I just felt something shift. 2 days later, my parents asked us to come to Silverleaf to talk like adults. The house was colder than usual. Della joined via speakerphone from Los Angeles. I could hear cafe noise behind her. My mom folded her hands neatly on the dining table. We've thought about this, she said. You move the wedding to May 2026. We'll help cover the change fees. Everyone wins. How much are you offering? I asked. My father's mouth tightened. We'll help. The venue penalties alone are $12,000 to $15,000, I said. We'd lose the date. Some vendors would require new deposits. Flights would have to be rebooked. It's just money, my father said. Della's voice crackled through the speaker. I already paid my deposit, Sable. Like that settled it. I looked at the marble floor, at the spotless counters, at the house that had always looked perfect. The date stays, I said. My father stood. Then you're forcing our hand. The meeting ended 10 minutes later. The next morning at 6:52 a.m., my phone buzzed. Since you've chosen this path, don't expect our financial support. The $120,000 from your grandparents was meant for a wedding that honors family. This does not. You will receive nothing. I read it 3 times. The words didn't hurt at first. They hollowed. Ethan read over my shoulder. Can they do that? I asked quietly. I don't know, he said. But we'll find out. I didn't respond to my father. I didn't beg. I didn't apologize. But as I stared at that message, I understood something clearly for the first time. This wasn't about Bali. This wasn't about a calendar. This was about control. And I didn't know it yet, but they weren't just threatening to take the money. They had already done something else behind my back. For 47 days, my parents didn't speak to me. The silence wasn't messy. It was precise. I called my mom 6 times, straight to voicemail. I called my dad 4 times. It rang once, then dropped. I texted short messages. I miss you. Can we talk? I still want you there. Most were marked delivered. A few marked read. None answered. At first, I told myself they were cooling down. Then I opened Instagram. Della's Bali retreat prep filled my feed. Coordinated workout sets, vision boards, counting down to healing and growth. My parents liked every post. My mom commented, "So proud of you, sweetheart." My dad wrote, "You deserve this." They weren't too upset to log in. They weren't too overwhelmed to type. They were choosing silence with me. One Sunday, Ethan and I attended a small family lunch at my Aunt Sylvia's house. I overheard my name twice in low voices. She's being stubborn. It's just a date. No one mentioned the contracts, the deposits, the 200 guests. The story had already been simplified. I was difficult. I was choosing ego over family. On the drive home, Ethan said quietly, "They're shaping the narrative." "What do you mean if they escalate this? People will already think you're the problem." The word escalate lodged in my mind. That night, I created a folder on my laptop. Contracts, emails, screenshots, text messages. I documented the date of the first call, the meeting at Silverleaf, the 6:52 a.m. text. I didn't know what I would need it for, but I felt something building. Ethan started asking questions too. "What does the trust document actually say?" he asked one evening. "I don't know the exact wording," I admitted. He nodded slowly. "I'll look into it." I thought he meant casually, just curiosity. Then on the 48th day, my mom called. I stepped onto our balcony to answer. "We've discussed it," she said. "Discussed what?" "We'll attend the wedding." Relief flickered in my chest. But she continued, "Don't expect us to celebrate." My stomach dropped. "We won't smile for photos until you apologize to Della," she said. "We won't contribute financially, and we want it clear that your actions have consequences." "Consequences," I repeated. "This is about humility, Sable. The word again. We're coming because family shows up," she added. "But we won't pretend this is acceptable." The air felt thin. "So you're attending," I said slowly to make a point. "To teach you." I closed my eyes. "Okay," I said. No arguing, no begging, just okay. After I hung up, I didn't cry. I felt humiliated. Not because they were angry, because they were planning to demonstrate that anger publicly. They didn't need me to move the date anymore. They needed me to bow. And as I stood there staring at the Arizona sky, I realized something else. They still weren't done. They were working on something else behind the scenes, and whatever it was, it had my wedding at the center of it. The email came on a Thursday afternoon while I was reviewing a mentoring schedule at work. Subject line, urgent, conflicting instructions regarding October 18th event. My pulse kicked once hard. It was from Kara Whitfield, our venue coordinator at the Boulders. "Hi, Sable. I'm reaching out because we've received multiple communications about potentially modifying or postponing your October 18th event. Before we proceed in any direction, I wanted to confirm details directly with you. Please see attached." Attached. My fingers felt stiff as I opened the thread. The sender name hit me first. Marianne Hartwell. Email 1 Polite Measured. "We'd like to explore options for moving the October 18th event to 2026. Please advise on availability and penalties. Email 2 Firmer. This is a sensitive family matter. The bride is making a mistake and we are trying to protect her from financial consequences. Email 3 Urgent, almost theatrical. This wedding should not proceed on this date. As the mother of the bride, I'm asking you to help us correct this before further damage is done." The timestamp stretched back over 2 weeks. While she was telling me they would attend, while she was telling me to learn humility, while she was demanding an apology. Her hands had been working behind my back. For a moment I couldn't breathe. Then something inside me snapped into focus. I didn't call her. I called Kara. "Hi, this is Sable Hartwell," I said, keeping my voice steady. "I need to confirm that no changes are to be made unless they come directly from my email and only after a video call confirmation." Kara didn't hesitate. "Understood. We haven't altered anything. That's why I reached out. I'd like the full thread forwarded, including timestamps and any phone logs I added. And please flag our account. No instructions from anyone except me." There was a pause. "Is everything okay?" Kara asked gently. "No," I said, "but it will be." When I hung up, my hands were shaking not from fear, but from clarity. This wasn't emotional anymore. It was procedural. An hour later, my florist texted, "Hey, quick question. Did you want to change the ceremony start time and move portraits to a different desert location?" I stared at the screen. "No. Why we got a call earlier this week from someone identifying herself as you. She knew your color palette and mentioned the eucalyptus garlands. I thought it was odd, but figured I'd double-check. My body went cold. "Can you send me the call log?" I asked. "And any notes you took?" She responded with a screenshot of the timestamp and a short summary. Female voice, confident, mentioned family scheduling conflict. It wasn't just email. Someone had called vendors pretending to be me. The level of calculation in that made my stomach turn. If the florist had believed it, if Kara had processed those requests, things would have unraveled quickly. Guests would receive conflicting updates. Vendors would scramble. The timeline would collapse. 200 people would assume I'd lost control. That was the goal. Not necessarily to cancel the wedding outright. To make it chaotic. To make me look unstable. To corner me into going back to Silverleaf and saying, "Please fix this." I forwarded everything to Ethan. He called immediately. "Okay," he said, voice low. "This is bigger than you think." "What does that mean?" "Tonight," he said. "I need to show you something." "Ethan, what?" "Something. Trust me." That word again. Trust. I exhaled slowly. "Okay." Before I went home, I made one more call. My Uncle Ronan, my dad's younger brother, picked up on the second ring. "Hey, kiddo, I didn't sugarcoat it. They're trying to interfere with the venue," I said, "and possibly vendors." There was a long silence. "Your father?" he asked. "Yes." A heavy breath on the other end. "What do you need from me?" "If he refuses to walk me down the aisle," I said carefully. "Will you?" He didn't hesitate. I'd be honored. It was the first time someone in my family said plainly, "This isn't right." By the time I got home to our apartment in Tempe, I wasn't crying. I was organizing. Contracts in one folder, vendor logs in another, emails labeled by date. Ethan was already at the kitchen table, laptop open. He looked up when I walked in. "Sit down," he said quietly. The way he said it made me understand. This was no longer just about October 18th. This was about money. And when he turned the laptop toward me, I realized they hadn't just threatened to take something away. They'd already taken it. Ethan didn't start with accusations. He started with paperwork. "I need you to look at this like data," he said, "not like emotion." He pulled up a PDF of my grandparents' trust document. The language was clean specific. $120,000 to be distributed to the first grandchild upon marriage, to be used for wedding expenses, establishment of marital residence, or related purposes at the beneficiary's discretion. Beneficiary. That was me. "Your parents are trustees," Ethan explained. "That means they have a legal obligation to act in your best interest. Not theirs, not your sister's." He clicked to a bank statement. "Now look at July 18th, 2025. The date didn't mean anything at first. Then it did. July 18th, 5 days before the meeting at Silverleaf. 5 days before my father told me to learn humility. A line item sat in the middle of the statement. Transfer. $80,000. Recipient, Delphine Hartwell. Memo, advance wedding distribution." My brain rejected it for a second. "Della isn't engaged," I said. "I know." The transfer amount glared at me. $80,000. Gone. Before they demanded I change my date. Before they claimed I was dishonoring the family. They hadn't reacted to my refusal. They had already moved the money. "This wasn't anger," Ethan said quietly. "This was premeditated." My chest felt hollow. "They wrote advance wedding distribution," I whispered, "like she's the bride. It's a way to make it look procedural," he said. "On paper." He scrolled further. Smaller withdrawals, $3,000 here, $2,000 there. Not enormous, but tagged vaguely as event services and vendor coordination. Those could mean anything, he admitted, but it suggests the trust wasn't being preserved the way it should have been. My father's words echoed in my head. Honor family, humility, respect. They had built a moral argument on top of a financial decision they'd already made. Then Ethan opened another statement. September 10th, 2025. Transfer, $15,500. Memo Bali extension package and excursions. This one came from my father's personal account. "So while he was cutting you off," Ethan said evenly, "he was funding this." I let out a laugh that didn't sound like mine. They were teaching me humility, while wiring thousands to extend Della's beach vacation. I leaned back in my chair. The room felt too small. It wasn't just about the wedding anymore. It wasn't about October. It wasn't even about the $120,000. It was a pattern. Della invested in. Sable expected to absorb. All those years of, "You'll be fine," all those years of being steady. I had mistaken neglect for independence. Ethan reached across the table and took my hand. "I didn't dig into this to humiliate them," he said. "I did it because this affects our future. If they can move $80,000 out of your trust without consequence, what else are they willing to manipulate?" I stared at the screen. "If we confront them privately," I said slowly, "they'll deny it. Probably. If we sue immediately, they'll claim it's a misunderstanding. Maybe." He closed the laptop halfway. "There's another option." I met his eyes. "We present the truth publicly," he said, "at the wedding. Not to shame, but to remove their leverage. The idea hung between us. Scandal, fallout, extended family, business consequences. They'll say I'm destroying the family I said." "They already are," he replied. I stood and walked to the bathroom. I stared at myself in the mirror for a long time. I expected to see a daughter falling apart. Instead, I saw someone tired of swallowing it. For the first time, I understood something clearly. If I stayed silent, this would repeat. At holidays, when we bought a house, when we had children. Control disguised as love. I pressed my hand against my collarbone, feeling the phantom pressure that had lived there for years. "I won't apologize," I whispered to my reflection. "Not to keep the peace." When I walked back into the kitchen, Ethan was waiting. "Okay," I said. "Okay, we prepare." He nodded once. From that moment on, I wasn't waiting to see if my parents would show up to the wedding. I was waiting for the exact moment the room would go silent. I woke up at 5:12 a.m. on October 18th with my heart already racing. For a second, I didn't remember why. Then it all rushed back, the red rocks, the ceremony, the ballroom, the empty chairs that might or might not be filled. I reached for my phone before I even opened my eyes. No texts from my parents. No, "We're proud of you." No, "Are you okay?" Just vendor confirmations and group messages from bridesmaids. Something in me had stopped expecting softness from them weeks ago. That morning I felt it fully. I wasn't waiting for them to behave differently. I wasn't hoping for a last-minute change of heart. I just wanted the day to unfold the way Ethan and I had built it. At the salon in Old Town Scottsdale, the air smelled like hairspray and espresso. Tessa. My maid of honor kept the room moving, organizing coffee runs, checking the timeline, fielding questions. My mother should have been there adjusting my veil, pretending to fuss. Instead, Tessa zipped my garment bag open and held my dress like it was something sacred. "You good?" she asked quietly. "I'm steady," I said. The word tasted different now. When the stylist clipped in my grandmother's pearl earrings, the only piece of jewelry I'd insisted on wearing, I felt something anchor inside me. My grandmother had loved simply, fiercely. No strategy, no leverage. I needed that reminder. Around noon, someone mentioned Della. "She's in Santorini now," one of the bridesmaids said softly, showing me a story. White cliffs, blue water, a caption about living authentically. It didn't hurt the way it might have before. It just felt like a timestamp. She chose to post. She chose to be seen. And I chose this. Back at the boulders, the bridal suite buzzed with quiet urgency. The desert light outside the window glowed amber against the rock formations. Guests were beginning to arrive below. I moved toward the window without thinking. That's when I saw them. My parents. They stepped out of their car dressed impeccably. My father in a charcoal suit, my mother in pale blue silk. They paused at the entrance. Then they walked past the front row seating chart. I watched as they chose 2 seats in the back corner of the ceremony area. Far left, removed. 2 chairs in the front row remained empty. Reserved cards with their names sat untouched. The symbolism was deliberate. Anyone with eyes would see it. They hadn't boycotted. They'd downgraded. I felt the sting of it sharp and quick. Then I let it pass. A knock on the door pulled me back. Uncle Ronan stepped in his tie, slightly crooked, his eyes red around the edges. "You ready?" he asked. I slipped my hand into his. In that moment, walking toward the ceremony line, I realized something quietly powerful. I was choosing who represented family for me. Not blood, not control. Choice. The music started. White chairs filled the overlook, the desert stretching endlessly beyond them. A few empty seats dotted the rows, people who'd chosen to avoid whatever story they thought they'd heard. I didn't look toward the back. I kept my eyes on Ethan. He stood at the altar in a light gray suit, hands clasped, steady as a mountain. Pastor Nolan began the ceremony, voice calm, practiced. The wind lifted my veil just slightly as Ronan and I walked down the aisle. I felt hundreds of eyes on me, and somewhere behind them, 2 pairs that wanted me to bend. I didn't. When Pastor Nolan reached the familiar line, "If anyone objects to this union, speak now or forever hold your peace," my body went rigid. A breath, a heartbeat, then the scrape of a chair. My father stood. The sound cut through the desert quiet. A ripple moved through the guests' shoulders, turning heads twisting. "Sable," he said, voice carrying easily. Your mother and I are leaving. You need to think about what you've done to this family." My mother's sob followed loud enough to travel. It wasn't grief. It was performance. Gasps spread across the chairs. My father didn't look at Ethan. He looked at me. This is not how family behaves. Then they turned and walked straight down the center aisle past every guest, past me, past the pastor. Heels clicking against stone. The ceremony space felt suspended in glass. No one moved. I could feel my pulse in my fingertips. My throat tightened. My vision narrowed for a fraction of a second. Uncle Ronan leaned toward me. "Keep going," he whispered. I turned to Pastor Nolan. "Continue, please," I said clearly. He blinked once, then nodded. "Love is patient," he resumed. And just like that, we reclaimed the moment. Ethan took my hands. When he reached his vows, he deviated slightly from what we'd written. "Sable," he said, voice steady, "I promise to stand beside you, especially when it's uncomfortable. Especially when people are watching." There it was, a line drawn. We exchanged rings, we kissed. The applause that followed wasn't hesitant. It was strong. Not for spectacle, for defiance. During cocktail hour on the terrace, whispers moved like wind. What happened? Did they really? Why would he? I answered every question the same way. They made their choice. Ethan kept checking his watch. He didn't need to explain why. As the sun dipped behind the rocks and guests filtered toward the ballroom, I felt something settle inside me. I hadn't cried in the ceremony. I hadn't begged. But I knew the night wasn't over. There was a moment coming that would stop the air in that room, and this time it wouldn't be my father standing. The ballroom at the Boulders looked exactly as I'd imagined 18 months earlier. Soft lighting, eucalyptus garlands, round tables dressed in ivory. The projection screen set up near the DJ booth for what guests assumed would be a sentimental slideshow. At table 3, front left, 2 reserved seats sat empty. Name cards still upright. No one pretended not to notice. Dinner began with the choreography of normalcy. Filet mignon, sea bass, clinking glasses. The best man stood first, telling stories about Ethan's terrible college haircut. Laughter rippled through the room. Tessa followed, voice warm, speaking about loyalty and late-night talks. The energy lifted just enough. Then Ethan leaned toward me. "If you want to stop this," he murmured. "We stop." I shook my head. "Do it." He stood. "Thank you all for being here," he began, taking the microphone. The room quieted automatically. "I wasn't planning on making a speech like this," he said. "But something happened today that shouldn't go unaddressed." He clicked a small remote. The screen behind him lit up. Title slide. The Price of Humility. The sound in the room changed. Forks paused midair. Chairs creaked once, then stilled. Ethan didn't raise his voice. They said she needed to learn humility. Slide 1, a black and white photo of my grandparents on their wedding day. They left a trust for their first grandchild to marry. Slide 2, highlighted trust language. $120,000. Beneficiary. My name circled. Slide 3, bank statement dated July 18, 2025. $80,000 transfer. Recipient Delphine Hartwell. Memo advance wedding distribution. A murmur rolled through the tables. "Delphine isn't engaged," Ethan said calmly, "and this transfer occurred before anyone demanded Sable change her wedding date." Slide 4, screenshots of Della's Bali retreat posts, timestamps overlapping October 18th. Slide 5, September 10th transfer of $15,500 from my father's personal account for Bali extension excursions. Slide 6, emails from my mother to the venue requesting cancellation. Slide 7, florist call logs documenting someone impersonating me. Slide 8, video clip of my father standing during the ceremony. The audio was clear. The room felt airless. Ethan let the silence sit. Then he displayed the final slide, a breakdown of our wedding expenses. $52,000 total. Paid by Sable and Ethan. Parental contribution $0. Trust funds withdrawn $80,000. "She didn't learn humility today," Ethan said quietly. "She learned the truth." He placed 3 printed folders on a nearby table. "If anyone requires documentation for legal purposes," he added, "we have copies." He sat down beside me. No one clapped immediately. There was a long, heavy pause. Then a single pair of hands started Uncle Ronan's. It spread table by table. Some people remained seated stunned. A few relatives from my father's side stood abruptly and walked out. Others wiped tears. Phones began lighting up across the room. Ethan leaned toward me and powered mine off. Tonight, he said softly, is still our wedding. The DJ, pale but professional, restarted the music. The dance floor filled faster than expected. Release. By midnight, when we returned to the bridal suite, my phone was vibrating nonstop. One voicemail caught my attention. This is Rachel Klein from Channel 12 News. We've received information regarding a dispute involving the Hartwell Auto Group at a wedding tonight. I looked at Ethan. It's spreading. Good, he replied. Within 48 hours, the clip circulated online. Reviews flooded my father's dealerships, customers questioning integrity, allegations of stealing from family. On Tuesday, a trust litigation attorney named Miles Keene called. I've reviewed the materials circulating, he said. You have a strong case for breach of fiduciary duty. We met him downtown Phoenix 2 days later. He outlined the claims clearly breach of fiduciary duty, conversion, unjust enrichment, full restoration of the $120,000, punitive damages, legal fees. They will want to settle, he said evenly. Public pressure alone will force it. He was right. Mediation happened 3 weeks later. My parents stayed in separate rooms. The offer came after 4 hours. Full repayment, additional damages, legal fees covered. One condition, no further public statements. I had one condition of my own. A signed letter acknowledging misuse of the trust and favoritism. They agreed. The funds were wired within 5 business days. I didn't respond to the letter. 6 months later, Ethan and I closed on a house in Queen Creek. 3 bedrooms, 2 baths, a small nursery painted soft sage green. I was 14 weeks pregnant. Della's follower count had dropped sharply. Several brands distanced themselves. My parents sent a gift once. I returned it. When they asked through relatives about meeting the baby someday, I said the same thing every time. Consistency first, then we'll talk. One evening, as Ethan and I sat on the nursery floor, reviewing the trust documents we were drafting for our child, he asked, "What should we write?" I thought about Silverleaf, about leverage, about conditions disguised as love. Write that this money is for building a life that makes them happy, I said, not one that makes us comfortable. He smiled. We signed. There are families you're born into, and there are families you choose to build. On October 18th, I stopped trying to win the first, and I started protecting the second. Sometimes the hardest lesson isn't about money or public shame. It's about realizing that love without control is quieter and stronger. Tonight, we watched a woman choose dignity over approval, truth over comfort. And maybe that's something many of us recognize in our own way. Because at some point, all of us face a moment where keeping the peace means losing ourselves. What stays with us isn't the applause or the fallout. It's the boundary, the calm voice that says, this is where it stops, not to punish, not to win, but to protect what we are building. Family can be complicated, tender, messy, and sometimes the kindest thing we can do for others and for ourselves is to draw a line without drawing blood. If this story stayed with you, you're always welcome here. Consider subscribing, not just for the next chapter, but to be part of a space where we sit with stories like this and listen with empathy. And if you'd like, leave a few words in the comments about what family means to you. We read them, and they matter. Thank you for spending this time with us. Take care of yourselves, take care of each other, and we'll see you in the next story.